A poor cleaner saw a bucket floating with 2 babies and decided to raise them. But 6 years later, the billionaire parents returned and shocked everyone. The sky still held shades of grey when June finished her shift. She wiped down the last tables at the restaurant, changed out of her uniform into worn-out clothes, and stepped out into the cold, early morning air. Her shoulders ached after 8 hours of work, but the walk home, bordering the river, always eased her fatigue. It was her moment of peace. June was 32 years old, with a life organized in simplicity. A cleaner in 2 different places, a restaurant at night and private homes during the day. She never had much, but she never complained either. Her small one-room apartment, though worn by time, was clean and welcoming. The peeling walls told stories of many previous tenants, but she had made that space her refuge. That morning, the river seemed rougher than usual. A heavy rain had fallen during the night, and the current carried branches and trash. June was following her usual path when something different caught her attention. A faint sound, almost imperceptible over the noise of the water. She stopped, listened more carefully. It must be just the wind, she thought, trying to convince herself. But the sound came again, a cry, fragile, instinctive. An abandoned cat, maybe, she considered, already moving closer to the bank. What she saw next froze her entire body. Among some branches caught on the rocks, a blue plastic bucket was bobbing. It seemed to be stuck there by chance, as if the current had carried it to that specific spot. And inside it, "My God," she whispered, unable to believe her eyes. 2 newborn babies, tiny, wrapped in soaked blankets that barely protected them. Their little faces were red from crying and the cold, their mouths open in a silent plea for help. June didn't think. She didn't calculate consequences. She didn't hesitate. She went down the slippery bank, waded into the knee-deep water, and reached the bucket. The icy water soaked through her pants, but she barely felt it. Carefully, she lifted the bucket and brought it to the shore. How could someone... The question died in her throat. The babies looked so small, so fragile. Their skin was cold to the touch. Without wasting time, June took off her coat and wrapped both children together, trying to warm them. They were identical. 2 girls, she realized. Twins. Their eyes were closed. Dark hair stuck to their wet little heads. She looked around. There was no one nearby, just the river, the trees, and the silence of the dawn as witnesses. I need to take them to a hospital, she initially thought, but something made her hesitate. She had heard stories. Abandoned children entering the system, separated, growing up in foster homes. And these 2, so small, so alike. Would they be kept together? A strange feeling grew in her chest. She couldn't explain it, but she felt this encounter was not by chance. June had never had a family of her own. Her parents had died when she was a teenager. She had never known the love of a man who would stay. She had never had the chance to be a mother. And now, life had placed in her arms 2 children who desperately needed someone. "You will never be alone again," she whispered, holding them tightly against her chest. Her voice came out firm, like a sealed promise. With the babies in her arms, she walked quickly home. The sun was beginning to rise, lighting her path. Every step was a decision. Every yard took her further from the idea of handing the children over to the authorities and closer to a new life. She arrived at her apartment, out of breath. She locked the door behind her and placed the babies on her bed. Both were still crying, but the sound seemed weaker now. They needed warmth, food, and immediate care. "What do I do? What do I do?" she repeated to herself, rushing back and forth in the small space. June had never cared for a baby before, let alone 2. But her instinct spoke louder. She gathered all her clean towels and warmed them with the small heater in the bathroom. Carefully, she removed the wet blankets and dried the babies. Their little bodies were so small they could fit in her hands. "You are warriors," she said softly as she dried them. "You survived the water, the cold. You're going to be okay." She had no baby clothes, so she improvised with her own softest t-shirts, cutting and tying them like diapers and blankets. She warmed some water and tested it on her wrist, as she'd seen in movies. With an old dropper she found in a drawer, she gave the little ones warm water, one at a time. They need milk, she thought, worried, and a doctor. But how would she explain the presence of these babies? What would she say, that she found them in the river and decided to keep them? Would she be arrested for kidnapping? Would the children be taken away? Fear made her heart race. She looked at the two babies, now calmer in their improvised nest of towels. They were perfect, too small, yes, newborns for sure. They were probably not even 24 hours old. I need help, she concluded. She remembered Martha, an elderly woman who lived 2 floors below. She was a retired midwife, and they sometimes chatted in the hallway. June picked up the babies, wrapped them carefully, and went down the building's stairs, praying Martha was home. She knocked on the door, trying to control the trembling of her hands. When Martha opened it, her eyes widened in surprise. "June!" "What?" "Please, I need your help," June interrupted, showing the bundle in her arms. "I found them in the river. They were in a bucket. They're alive, but I don't know what to do." Martha, with decades of experience helping bring lives into the world, asked no unnecessary questions. She opened the door wide. "Come in, quickly." For the next 2 hours, Martha examined the babies thoroughly. She cut their umbilical cords, which had been poorly tied. She cleaned them properly. She improvised bottles with a formula she assured was good for newborns. "They're healthy, all things considered," she said finally. "They're premature, but not by much, maybe 8 months. But they need a doctor, June, and you need to notify the authorities." June looked at the babies, now asleep after feeding. Her heart had already made a decision that her mind was still trying to process. What if they separate them? What if they go to different homes? Martha sighed. She understood June's fear, but also the legal implications. "What are you thinking of doing, June?" "Keeping them," she answered without hesitation. "Giving them a home, keeping them together." Martha looked at June for a long time. She had known the young woman for years. She saw a quiet loneliness in her, a natural kindness. But she also knew the challenges. It won't be easy. You work 2 jobs, live in a small space, you barely have enough money for yourself. "I'll find a way. I can work more. I can take them with me to my cleaning jobs. I can..." "And legally, what will you say when they ask where they came from?" June hadn't thought about that. How would she explain 2 babies suddenly appearing in her life? Martha came closer and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I have a friend, a social worker. She can help sort this out without the girls being separated, but you have to trust the process, June. What if they take them from me?" "I'll be by your side. We'll explain the situation. You saved their lives, June. That counts for a lot." June looked at the babies again. Something inside her said this was her path, that these children had come into her life for a reason. "All right," she finally agreed. "But until then, they stay with me." Martha nodded and promised to call her friend that very day. Before June left, she handed her a bag of baby clothes. "They were my granddaughter's. She's grown out of them. It'll help for now." June thanked her, moved by the gesture. She returned to her apartment with the babies and a small glimmer of hope. In the following days, she learned to care for the twins with Martha's help. The social worker, a compassionate woman named Helen, came to visit and started the legal process. After hearing the story and seeing the bucket where the babies were found, Helen promised to help June get temporary custody. "It won't be quick or easy," she warned. "They will investigate, search for the biological parents. You'll need to prove you can care for them properly." June accepted all the terms. She filled out forms, answered questions, and opened her life up for evaluation. Meanwhile, the babies grew, gained weight, and responded to her touch. "They need names," said Martha during one of her visits. June had already thought about it. During sleepless nights, rocking the 2 of them when they cried, names had come to her mind. "Elodie and Mira," she answered with a smile. "Elodie means foreign flowers because she came from an unknown place, and Mira is the one who admires because from the beginning she opens her little eyes and seems to watch everything with curiosity." Martha smiled, approving of the choice. "Say beautiful names for strong girls." As the days passed, June completely reorganized her life. She managed to get leave from one of her jobs, vaguely explaining a family emergency. To the other, she took the babies, hidden in a modified basket. Her employers, an elderly couple, eventually found out, but moved by the story, they allowed her to continue. The small apartment was adapted. June sold some furniture to make space for a simple crib she bought second-hand. Every penny was counted twice before being spent. But at the end of each day, when she looked at Elodie and Mira sleeping side by side, she knew it was all worth it. One night, about 2 months after finding the babies, Elodie developed a high fever. June panicked. It was the middle of the night. She had no car, and the nearest hospital was far away. She called Martha, who arrived quickly with baby medicine. It might just be a mild infection, the former midwife reassured her, but we need to monitor it. June didn't sleep. She spent the entire night with Elodie in her arms, taking her temperature every hour, giving the medicine at the exact times, and applying cool compresses to her forehead. At some point, she realized she was singing, a soft melody made up on the spot, with a voice that trembled with worry and love. "Get well, my little one," she whispered between improvised verses. "Your sister and I need you." The next morning, the fever had broken. Elodie opened her eyes, and for the first time, June saw a small smile on her little face. It was as if the sun had risen inside the apartment. 6 months after that fateful day by the river, Helen brought good news. The search for the biological parents had found no one. No records of missing twins, no reports that matched the description. The process for permanent custody could begin. "There's still a road ahead," Helen explained. "But the chances are good, June. You've proven yourself capable, even with all the difficulties." That night, June put the babies to sleep and sat beside the crib, watching their peaceful breathing. They were hers now, not by blood, but by choice, by love, by destiny. Outside, the river continued its course, indifferent to the transformation it had caused. The waters that had once brought tragedy to 2 small lives had ended up carrying them exactly where they needed to be, in the arms of someone who would give everything for them. June didn't know what the future held. She only knew that as long as she had strength, Elodie and Mira would never know abandonment again, and that, for now, was more than enough. Time passed far too quickly, like water slipping through her fingers. 6 years went by since that cold morning by the river. Now the small apartment that once housed only June was full of life, laughter, and little footprints everywhere. Elodie and Mira were 5 years old. 2 girls identical in features, but completely different in personality. Elodie, the calmer one, spent hours drawing with the worn-out colored pencils June brought from the houses she cleaned. "They're used, but they still have a lot of color to give," June would say, and the girl didn't mind. She turned every scribble into a small work of art. Mira, on the other hand, never stood still. She jumped, danced, made up crazy stories, and turned the building's hallway into her private playground. Life was simple, but none of the 3 complained. The closet held mended clothes, some donated by neighbors whose children had grown. June had learned to sew better over the years, a necessity that became a talent. She turned torn pants into shorts, large t-shirts into dresses, and each repaired piece got a small colorful embroidery to hide the patch. "Look, there's a flower on my pants," Mira would say, showing them to her friends from the public school they attended. "My mom made it. She does magic with a needle and thread," Elodie would add, proudly. The twins grew up sheltered from the world, but not lonely. June had decided to homeschool them, partly for fear of questions about the girls' origins, partly because she couldn't fit school schedules into her work routine. With books found in second-hand stores and basic knowledge, she taught the little ones to read, write, and count. "You are so smart," June would say with pride when the girls managed to read a new word or solve an addition problem. June just smiled, hiding her exhaustion. She worked more than ever. Besides the cleaning jobs, she started taking sewing commissions. At night, when the girls were asleep, she would sit under the dim light of a lamp and sew until her eyes burned. Party dresses, clothing alterations, curtains. She accepted any job that came her way. Money was always tight, divided between rent, food, school supplies, and the fund June kept hidden in a cookie tin on top of the closet, for emergencies and for the girls' future, as she told herself. There was always food on the table, but never leftovers. June had learned to work miracles with few ingredients. She turned leftovers into new meals, so delicious the girls never noticed they were eating the same chicken from the day before, now in the form of soup. "Mom, how do you make the food so good?" Mira would ask with her mouth full. "So the secret is the love I put in every pot," June would reply, keeping to herself the secret of the cheap spices they bought at the corner market. Toys were few, but cherished. A rag doll for each, made by June herself. Wooden blocks that a carpenter neighbor had given them. Children's books bought at used book fairs. And the most precious treasure, a box of new colored pencils they got for Christmas from the school principal, who was impressed with Elodie's drawings. The girls never complained about what they didn't have. To them, this life was normal. It was happy. They had a mother who loved them unconditionally, a safe roof over their heads, food on the table, and most importantly, each other. At night, June would tell them stories. Some she read from the few books they had. Others she made up on the spot. Their favorites were stories about twin princesses who had great adventures. The girls didn't realize it, but many of these stories were actually disguised lessons about courage, honesty, and kindness. "Tell the story of the princesses who helped the old lady in the forest again," Mira would ask almost every night. "No, today it's the one about the magic cave," Elodie would protest. June would end up telling both, even if it meant fewer hours of sleep before waking up for another day of work. On a rainy Sunday, the girls were restless. The small apartment seemed even smaller with their pent-up energy. They couldn't go to the park, as they did on sunny weekends. They didn't have a television to distract them. After a whole morning of "Mum, we're bored," June had an idea. "Girls, let's build something magical." She took all the sheets from the closet, some chairs from the kitchen, clothespins, and the only flashlight they had in the house. With the twins' excited help, she stretched the sheets from one end of the living room to the other, securing them to the furniture, creating a large fabric ceiling. She placed pillows and blankets on the floor. "There, our magic tent is almost ready," she announced to the girls' delight. Elodie ran to get her prettiest drawings, which were hung on the high-walls bags of the tent with tape that was already losing its stickiness. Mira brought the rag dolls and the few stuffed animals they owned. When everything was ready, June turned off the apartment lights and switched on the flashlight inside the tent. The effect was immediate. Shadows danced on the sheet walls, creating a new and mysterious world. "Now, let's pretend we're in an enchanted forest," June suggested, joining in the fun. "Or maybe on another planet." "No, Mum, we're at the bottom of the sea." "Look how the lights look like swimming fish," exclaimed Mira, moving her hands in front of the flashlight to create shadows that really did resemble fish. "I'm a mermaid," Elodie decided, lying on her stomach and pretending to swim. June joined her daughters on the floor, imitating a whale, making funny sounds that drew peals of laughter from the girls. For hours, they forgot about the rain outside, the small apartment, the mended clothes, and the scarce toys. In the magic tent, they were explorers of a limitless world. When evening came, June prepared hot chocolate, a rare luxury saved for special occasions, and the three of them stayed in the tent, now telling deep-sea horror stories, using the flashlight under their chins to create spooky faces. "This is the best day ever," declared Mira, with a chocolate mustache on her upper lip. "Can we do this every rainy day?" asked Elodie, already knowing the answer. "Of course we can," June promised. "Our magic tent will always be here, even when we can't see it." Elodie looked confused. "What do you mean, Mom?" June touched the girl's chest over her heart. "The magic we created today, this good feeling, is kept right here. Whenever you need it, you just have to remember this day." The girls smiled, understanding in their own way. That night, the three of them slept together in the makeshift tent, June in the middle, a daughter on each side. The rain continued outside, but inside that small world of sheets and love, everything was perfect. Life went on with its daily challenges. Bills to pay, shoes that became too small too quickly, occasional illnesses that scared June more than she admitted. But there were also small victories. The girls, good grades in school, a client's compliment on her sewing work, the neighbor who sometimes brought over a cake that was leftover, even though June suspected it was made especially for them. One afternoon, while the girls were playing in the small space between the buildings they called their courtyard, Mrs. Martha, who had helped with the babies years ago, approached June. "June, I wanted to show you this," Martha said, handing her a piece of paper. It was a drawing by Elodie, 3 figures holding hands, a large one in the middle, 2 small identical ones on the sides. Above, in childish letters that June had taught her, was written, "My family, the best in the world." "Elodie gave this to me when I visited you yesterday. Many children would draw big houses, cars, toys. She just drew this. And when I asked why, do you know what she said?" June shook her head, too emotional to speak. She said, "Because this is all we need to be happy." I thought you'd like to know. That night, as she watched her daughters sleep, June reflected on the journey she had taken. 6 years of daily struggle, of hard work, of constant worries. 6 years in which every saved penny was a small victory, every smile from the girls a reward. Every night they slept safe and fed an achievement. It hadn't been easy. It wouldn't be easy in the future. But looking at Elodie and Mira, with their identical faces and distinct personalities, June knew she would do it all over again, without hesitation. Those girls, found in the cold waters of the river on a day that now seemed distant, had given her life meaning. And she would fight with all her strength to keep them safe, loved, and happy, no matter what the future held. It was a Saturday afternoon like any other. June had finished her work at the Wilsons' house early and was enjoying the extra time with the girls. In the small space between the buildings, Elodie was drawing with colored chalk on the cement ground, while Mira played hopscotch on makeshift squares. June was sitting on a worn-out bench, mending a small tear in Elodie's blue dress. The sound of a powerful engine interrupted the street's calm. It wasn't common to see luxury cars in their simple neighborhood. Her black Mercedes, shiny and new, slowly pulled up in front of the building. June looked up from her work, more out of curiosity than concern. Probably someone lost, she thought. The girls also stopped their playing, drawn by the different car. Mira, always bolder, took a few steps toward the vehicle. "Mira, come back here," June called, as a precaution. The car door opened. A tall man, about 40 years old, got out first. He wore expensive clothes, dress pants, a well-ironed shirt, leather shoes that shone even in the faint afternoon light. His dark hair was beginning to show a few grey strands at the temples. He had an angular face, with strong features that reminded June of someone, but she couldn't place who. Next, a woman got out from the passenger side. Shorter, she wore a simple dress that June, with her trained seamstress's eye, recognized as expensive. Her hair was black, long, and perfectly styled. She had large, dark eyes that scanned the area with a mixture of apprehension and anxiety. By instinct, June stood up and called the girls to her side. Something about that couple put her on immediate alert. The man looked directly at her, then at the girls, and his face transformed. It was an expression June couldn't decipher. Surprise, emotion, shock. "It's them," he said quietly to the woman beside him, who brought a hand to her mouth. The two began to walk towards June and the girls. Now standing, June instinctively placed herself in front of her daughters, like a protective barrier. "Hello," the man said, his voice controlled but betraying nervousness. "You must be June." June's blood ran cold. How did they know her name? Who were these people? She squeezed each girl's hand tighter. "Yes, that's me." "Who are you?" The man looked at the woman, who now had tears in her eyes, and then back at June. "My name is Silas. This is my wife, Marianne. We've been looking for our daughters for a long time." The world seemed to stop for a moment. June felt as if the ground had disappeared from under her feet. Their daughters, it was impossible. After 6 years, how could they just show up like this, out of nowhere? "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "These are my daughters." Marianne took a step forward, her eyes fixed on the girls hiding partially behind June. "Mira and Elodie," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "When are those the names you gave them?" A shiver ran down June's spine. How did they know their names? How did you find us? What do you want? June asked, unable to hide the tremor in her voice. Silas looked around, noticing that the situation was starting to attract the attention of some curious neighbors watching from their windows. Can we talk somewhere more private? We have a lot to explain. June hesitated. Her mind was racing. Should she call the police, run inside with the girls? But something in the couple's eyes, a mixture of pain, regret, and hope, made her stop. Mommy, who are they? Elodie asked, clutching June's skirt. Why is the lady crying? Questioned Mira, ever the observer. June took a deep breath, trying to find a calm she didn't feel. Let's go upstairs, she finally decided, but just to talk. In the small apartment, the tension was palpable. June had the girls start drawing in the only bedroom, leaving the door ajar to watch them, while she sat with the strangers in the tiny living room. Explain yourselves, she demanded, without offering water or coffee, no pleasantries. Silas and Marianne looked at each other, as if deciding where to begin. It was Marianne who spoke first. 6 years ago, we abandoned our newborn daughters in a bucket by the river near here. The statement, so direct, hit June like a slap. So it was true. These were her girls' biological parents, the ones who had left them to die on a cold night. How could you? The words escaped her mouth before she could contain them, filled with an anger she didn't know she felt. Marianne looked down, while Silas took over the narrative. We were in a desperate situation. I lost my job. We were about to lose our house. Marianne had a difficult pregnancy, complications during childbirth. We had no way to care for one baby, let alone two. That's no excuse to abandon newborn children, June retorted, keeping her voice low so the girls wouldn't hear. We're not making excuses, Silas replied, running a hand through his hair in a nervous gesture. It was the worst mistake of our lives. Something that haunts us every day. I had postpartum depression, Marianne added, her voice barely a whisper. I couldn't even look at them without crying. We thought they would be better off somewhere else, that someone would find them quickly. And what if no one had found them? June couldn't hide her outrage. Clive, they could have died in that river. We know that, Silas said, his voice heavy with shame. Not a day goes by that we don't think about it, about what could have happened. How did you find me? June asked, still suspicious. Silas explained that after their financial situation improved, he got a good job at a tech company, and years later even became a partner. They started looking for their daughters. They hired private investigators who, after years of searching, finally found records from the social worker who had helped June with the girls' situation. Helen would never reveal information about us, June stated, certain of the discretion of the social worker who had become a friend over the years. She didn't, Silas agreed, but the investigator found public records, then cross-referenced information. It was years of work. And what do you want now? June asked directly, fear forming a knot in her throat. Did you come to take them away? Marianne looked up quickly, surprised by the question. No, of course not. We just want to meet them, to know if they're okay, to be a part of their lives, in some way. June studied the woman's face, looking for signs of a lie. She found none. Only pain, regret, and a timid hope. Dad, they are my daughters, June said, each word filled with emotion. I was the one who pulled them out of that river, who spent sleepless nights caring for them, who taught them to walk, to talk, to read, who dried their tears and celebrated their achievements. We know that, Silas said softly, and we are eternally grateful to you for it. We don't want to take your place. We just want a chance. In the next room, a childish laugh was heard, followed by a whisper. June glanced toward the sound, seeing the two identical little heads peeking through the ajar door. When they realized they'd been seen, the girls quickly hid, giggling softly. They're beautiful, Marianne commented, her voice choked. See, they seem happy. They are, June replied. Despite everything, they are happy children. A heavy silence settled in the small room, each adult lost in their own thoughts, their own fears. Can I see them up close? Marianne asked hesitantly. June felt her heart ache. All her instincts screamed to protect her daughters, to send these strangers away. but there was something in Marianne's voice, a silent plea, a deep pain that touched her. "Girls," June called, "come here, please." A few seconds passed before Elodie and Mira timidly entered the room, holding hands. They stopped beside June, watching the strangers with curiosity and a little apprehension. "These people want to meet you," June said, trying to keep her voice calm. They knew you when you were babies." The girls looked at Silas and Marianne with curiosity. Mira, always the more direct one, asked, "Are you friends with Mommy?" Marianne opened her mouth to answer, but no sound came out. Tears streamed silently down her face. It was Silas who answered, "We would very much like to be friends with your mum and with you too." Elodie, more sensitive to others' emotions, asked softly, "Why are you crying, ma'am? Are you sad?" Marianne tried to smile through her tears. "No, sweetie. Sometimes people cry when they're very happy. And I am very, very happy to meet you." Mira took a step forward, analyzing Marianne's face carefully. "Your eyes are like mine," she observed, tilting her head. June felt a pang in her chest. It was true. Marianne's large, dark eyes were identical to Mira's and Elodie's, something that had always puzzled her, as they didn't resemble her own. Silas slowly extended his hand, as if wanting to touch one of the girl's hair, but he held back. His gaze met June's, silently asking for permission. June didn't know what to do. She felt like she was on the edge of a cliff. These strangers, with their expensive car and fine clothes, could change everything. They could take away what she loved most in the world. They could destroy the family she had built with so much love and sacrifice. But she also saw in their eyes a genuine pain, a sincere regret. And above all, she saw in the girls something she couldn't deny: the features, the gestures, the genetic heritage that didn't come from her. "It's getting late," she said finally. "I think it's time for you to go." Silas nodded, understanding. He stood up and helped Marianne do the same. "Can we come back another day?" he asked as they walked to the door. "Just to talk, to get to know them better." June looked at her daughters, who were watching the scene with curious eyes. The past had finally knocked on her door, threatening everything she had built. But running away was not an option. It had never been her way of dealing with problems. "I'll think about it," she answered honestly. "I need time." Marianne, already at the door, turned one last time to look at the girls. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for taking such good care of them." When the couple left, June closed the door and leaned against it, feeling her legs go weak. Elodie and Mira came closer, looking at her with curiosity. "Who were they, Mommy?" Elodie asked again. June hugged them both tightly, as if she feared they might disappear at any moment. "They're people from the past," she answered vaguely. "I will talk about it later, okay? Now how about we finish that game we started?" The girls, easily distracted as 5-year-olds often are, ran back to the bedroom. June remained where she was for a few more moments, trying to process everything that had happened. The past had come back to haunt her. And now she had to decide how to protect her future, the two girls who were her entire life. 3 days passed since the unexpected encounter. June could barely sleep, tossing and turning in the narrow bed she shared with the girls. During the day, she worked mechanically, her mind always returning to that elegant couple and their looks full of regret. On the 4th night, the phone rang, a rare luxury June had only managed to install the previous year for emergencies. "Hello?" she answered, apprehensive. "June, it's Silas." The voice on the other end sounded hesitant. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." June looked at the girls playing on the worn rug in the living room. She moved away a little, lowering her voice. "What do you want?" "We'd like to visit them tomorrow, just to talk, to get to know the girls better. If you'll allow it, of course." June closed her eyes. A part of her wanted to refuse, to tell the man never to call again, to protect her family from any external threat. But another part, the part that always tried to do the right thing, even when it hurt, knew she couldn't just ignore the couple's existence. "At 4 in the afternoon, she finally replied. "After I get back from work, 1 hour, no more." When she hung up, Elodie came over, curious. "Who was that, Mommy?" June knelt to be at the girls' level. Remember those people who came to visit us the other day? They're coming back tomorrow." "Why?" asked Mira, frowning. They want to get to know you better." The girls exchanged glances, that silent communication that only twins seem to have. "Are they bad people?" asked Elodie, always worried. June hesitated. How to explain something so complex to 5-year-old children? "No, sweetie, they're not bad people, just people who made mistakes, like all of us." "What mistakes?" Mira insisted. June took a deep breath. She knew this moment would come, but she didn't expect it to be so soon. "Let's talk about it tomorrow, okay?" After they leave. The next day, promptly at 4, a soft knock sounded on the door. June opened it to find Silas and Marianne standing in the hallway. He was holding a large bag, she a bouquet of simple flowers. "Thank you for having us," Marianne said, extending the flowers. June accepted the gesture, not knowing how to react. She gestured for them to enter, noticing how out of place the couple seemed in the small apartment. Elodie and Mira were sitting at the kitchen table, coloring on reused paper June brought from work. They looked up as the visitors entered, but didn't run to hide like the first time. "Hello, girls," Silas greeted them with a nervous smile. "We brought you a few things." From the bag, he pulled out 3 new children's books with colorful, shiny covers, a box of paints with colors the girls had never seen before, and a board game still wrapped in plastic. The twins' eyes widened at the sight of the gifts. June felt a pang in her chest. She had never been able to give them things so new, so beautiful. "What do we say when we receive gifts?" she reminded them, trying to maintain normalcy. "Thank you," they replied in unison, still admiring the items on the table. "Can we see the books?" Elodie asked shyly. "Of course," Marianne replied, approaching slowly. This one tells the story of 2 sisters who find a magical forest." Soon the girls were flipping through the books, enchanted by the illustrations. Silas sat nearby, watching them with a look that mixed fascination and pain. June remained standing, like a sentinel, ready to intervene at the slightest sign of discomfort. "Yes, can you read?" Mira asked Marianne, pointing to a word in the book. "Yes, I can," she replied softly. "Do you want me to read to you?" Mira nodded, and Marianne began to read the story aloud. Her voice was melodious, full of inflections that captured the girls' attention. June watched, torn between jealousy and admiration for the way Marianne interacted with her daughters. Silas took the opportunity to approach June. "They are incredible," he commented in a low voice. "You've done a wonderful job." "I did what any mother would do," June replied, still on the defensive. "No, June, not everyone would have the courage to do what you did. To take in 2 unknown children and give them so much love." June didn't answer. His words seemed sincere, but she still didn't fully trust his intentions. "How did your lives get better?" she asked directly. "You mentioned you were struggling when you abandoned the girls." Silas sighed, his gaze momentarily lost in painful memories. "And I worked at a tech company that went bankrupt. After months of unemployment, I got a basic job at another company in the sector. It was minimum wage, but I took it. I worked hard, did overtime, learned new skills. Over time, I was promoted. 3 years ago, I became a junior partner." June absorbed the information in silence. It was a story of overcoming adversity, but one that didn't erase the abandonment. "And why did you only start looking for the girls now, after 6 years?" "We tried before," Silas answered, with a sincere look. "We started looking when our situation improved, about 4 years ago. But we had no leads. We didn't know if anyone had found the babies, if they were alive." His voice broke on the last word. "We hired investigators, but without success, until one of them found records of 2 twins informally adopted in the region near the river. It took years of work to get to you." June looked at the girls, now completely engrossed in the story Marianne was reading. Mira had already moved closer, almost touching the woman's arm to see the illustrations better. "What do you really want?" she finally asked, looking Silas in the eye. "We just want to be part of their lives, in some way," he replied. "We don't intend to take them from you, June. We know you are their mother in every way that matters." The hour passed quickly. When June announced it was time for them to leave, the girls seemed genuinely disappointed. "Are you coming back?" Elodie asked. "If your mother allows it," Silas replied, looking at June. After they left, June sat down with the girls. It was time to explain, as best she could, who those people were. "I'm Elodie, Mira. Remember how I always told you I found you when you were tiny babies, in the river, inside a bucket?" They nodded. It was a story they knew well, their origin story, told like a fairy tale where June was the hero who saved them. "Well, before you were in that bucket, you were in a woman's belly. That woman is Marianne." Their little faces scrunched up in confusion. "Like in a belly?" Mira asked. June explained as simply as possible how babies grow in mothers' bellies before they are born. The girls listened, fascinated and confused at the same time. "So, is Marianne our mother too?" Elodie asked, trying to understand. "She is the mother who gave birth to you," June explained, choosing her words carefully. "I am the mother who has taken care of you since you were babies." "And the man?" asked Mira. "Silas is... He helped bring you into the world. He and Marianne are married." "Why did they leave us in the river?" Mira's direct question hit June like an arrow. "They were going through very hard times," she answered, feeling she owed the girls some honesty, even while protecting them from the full truth. "They couldn't take care of you back then. They made a very wrong choice, but it seems they regret it now." "They're nice," Elodie commented. "They brought pretty books." "Yes, they are," June agreed, swallowing the lump in her throat. In the following weeks, the visits continued. Twice a week, Silas and Marianne would show up, always bringing small gifts, nothing extravagant after the first day, respecting the boundaries June had set. Sometimes it was just homemade cookies made by Marianne. Other times it was art supplies for Elodie or small educational toys. The girls, initially cautious, gradually opened up. Their natural curiosity overcame their distrust. June watched this growing closeness with conflicting feelings, happy to see her daughters forming new bonds, terrified at the possibility of losing them to people who could offer so much more than she could. A month after the first visit, during an afternoon when they were exploring the paints they had received, something significant happened. Marianne was showing Elodie how to mix colors to create new shades, while Silas helped Mira build a small house with wooden blocks. June had stepped out to prepare a simple snack in the kitchen. When she returned, she found Mira sitting spontaneously next to Marianne, painting with concentration. The girl, always the most independent and cautious with strangers, had switched places on her own accord, moving closer to the woman. June stopped at the door, watching how Mira stretched her neck to see better what Marianne was doing, how she imitated her gestures when mixing the paints. It was a simple scene but heavy with meaning, a small opening, a nascent trust. June felt her heart ache, but she didn't interrupt the moment. At the end of that visit, Silas made a request that June had been dreading. "We'd like to take the girls for an outing next Saturday," he said, "to the amusement park that opened in the next town over. If you agree, of course." June hesitated. It would be the first time the girls went out alone with them. "I'll go with you," she stated, not as a question but as a condition. "Of course," Silas replied quickly. "We wouldn't expect anything else." But on Saturday morning, when Silas called to confirm, June had a high fever. A bad flu had knocked her down during the night. "We can postpone," Silas offered over the phone. June could hear the disappointment in his voice, and she knew the girls would be disappointed too. They had been talking about the outing all week. "No," she decided after a few moments of hesitation. "You can go, but bring them back before dark." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," she replied, surprising herself with the decision. "They're excited, and I trust you'll take good care of them." It was the first time she had admitted it, that she trusted them, even if just a little. The day passed slowly for June, lying in bed with a fever, imagining what the girls were doing. When she finally heard the car pull up in front of the building, it was late afternoon. She got up, still weak, and went to the window. She saw Silas helping the girls out of the car. Both were carrying colorful balloons and small stuffed toys. Their faces shone with joy. Marianne followed them, carrying a bag that seemed to contain more souvenirs from the trip. The four of them formed an almost perfect picture of a happy family. June felt a pain that had nothing to do with her fever. When they entered the apartment, the girls ran to her, talking at the same time, eager to share every detail of their adventure. "Mommy, it was amazing. We rode the Ferris wheel. I won this unicorn in a ring toss game. We ate blue cotton candy. Silas took me on the little roller coaster twice." June smiled, absorbing their happiness, trying to ignore the pang of jealousy at hearing the name Silas pronounced with such familiarity. "I'm glad you had fun, my loves," she said, kissing their foreheads. "Now, why don't you go put away your new toys while I talk to Silas and Marianne?" When the girls left, June turned to the couple. "Thank you for taking good care of them." "It was a pleasure," Marianne replied, smiling. "They are wonderful children, so curious and polite." "How are you feeling?" Silas asked, noticing June's paleness. "Better," she lied. "The fever went down. We brought medicine," Marianne said, taking a box from her purse. "And also soup. It's in a thermos. It should still be warm." June accepted, surprised by the considerate gesture. Just then, Elodie and Mira came running back. "We're going to tell Mommy June all about it," Elodie exclaimed, jumping with excitement. "Everything we did today," the comment, so innocent, fell like a silent bomb in the room. June saw the impact on Silas and Marianne's expressions, a painful reminder that, despite their growing closeness, they were still strangers to the girls. They weren't Daddy and Mommy. They were just Silas and Marianne, nice people who took them on outings. Marianne tried to hide it, but her eyes filled with tears. Silas put his arm around her shoulders in a protective gesture. "Of course, tell her everything," he said, forcing a smile. "Your mother needs to know all about your adventures." The girls launched into an enthusiastic and disjointed narrative, jumping from one attraction to another, interrupting each other. June listened to them, but her eyes occasionally turned to the couple. She saw in them a mixture of joy for the shared day and sadness for the distance that still existed. When they finally said goodbye, it was already night. The girls, exhausted from the day's excitement, fell asleep quickly. June stayed awake, mentally replaying the events of the past few weeks. The presence of Silas and Marianne had brought changes, some good, like the girls' more frequent smiles, the sparkle in their eyes as they discovered new things, but it had also brought insecurities, doubts about the future, fear of losing what she loved most. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Silas and Marianne also lay awake, in the king-size bed of their comfortable home. "They called us by our names the whole time," Marianne said at last, breaking the silence. "Silas, look at that." "Marianne, can I have more?" "It's natural," Silas replied, holding her hand. "We're still new in their lives. We need to be patient. What if they never see us as parents? What if we're always just visitors?" Silas had no answer for that. He knew they had made a terrible mistake, one that might never be fully repaired. June had been the constant in the girls' lives, the safe rock, the unconditional love. They were just figures who had appeared out of nowhere, trying to build bridges over a chasm they themselves had created. "One day at a time," he said finally. "That's all we can do." Marianne nodded, wiping away a silent tear. The memories of that day, the girls' smiles, their little hands holding theirs on the Ferris wheel, the growing trust in their eyes, were too precious to be overshadowed by the pain of a title they might never receive. "One day at a time," she repeated, like a promise. It was late afternoon when the phone rang. June was finishing up dinner prep while the girls drew at the kitchen table. Her fingers still smelled of garlic when she answered. "Hello." "June?" Silas's voice sounded different, tired, worried. "Sorry to call like this, but—" He paused, as if searching for words. "Is something wrong?" June asked, feeling a pang of concern. "It's Marianne," he answered finally. "She's sick." June waited for him to continue, holding the phone tighter. "Pneumonia. It started as a simple cold 2 weeks ago, but it got worse. She's been in the hospital since yesterday." "I'm so sorry," June said, sincerely. Despite all the complications the couple had brought into her life, she wished no harm on either of them. "Now the doctors say she'll be fine, but it will take time. The problem is—" Silas hesitated again, She keeps asking for the girls. She's very down, and I think seeing them could help her recovery." June closed her eyes. Over the past few months, she had established a comfortable routine with Silas and Marianne. Visits twice a week, always at her apartment, always under her supervision. An occasional outing on Sundays when June could accompany them. Clear boundaries, unspoken but respected rules. A hospital visit would be a deviation from those rules. "I understand it's a difficult request," Silas continued, interpreting June's silence. Perhaps it would mean so much to her. June looked at the girls, focused on their drawings. In recent months, they had formed a genuine bond with the couple. They talked about them during the week, asked when they would be back, and showed excitement for each visit. They still didn't call them Dad and Mom, and June secretly thanked God for that, but they had accepted them into their lives. "I'll ask the girls," she said finally. "If they want to go, I won't stop them." "Thank you, June." Silas's voice trembled slightly. "Really, thank you." After hanging up, June sat down with Elodie and Mira. She explained as simply as possible that Marianne was sick and in the hospital. "How is she sick?" Elodie asked, frowning with concern. "She has an infection in her lungs. It's like a very bad flu," June explained. "She's taking medicine and will get better, but she's feeling sad and would like to see you." "Hospitals are scary," Mira commented, biting her lip. "I know, sweetie, but sometimes we have to be brave to help people who care about us." The girls were silent for a moment, processing the information. It was Elodie, usually the more cautious one, who spoke first. "I want to see Marianne. She must be feeling lonely." Mira nodded in agreement. "We can make drawings to make her happy," she added. June felt a mix of pride and nostalgia. Her girls were growing up, developing empathy, caring about others. It was exactly what she had always wanted for them, even if the situation was complicated. "I'll call Silas and tell him you want to go," she said, kissing each on the forehead. "Now let's finish dinner." The next morning, Silas came to pick them up. He looked worn out, with deep dark circles under his eyes, but he smiled when he saw the girls with colorful drawings in their hands. "We made get-well cards for Marianne," Mira explained, showing hers. A bright rainbow covered almost the entire page. "She's going to love them," Silas replied, his voice thick with emotion. June had decided to go with them. As much as she trusted Silas, she didn't feel comfortable letting the girls go to a hospital alone. The ride was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. At the hospital, the smell of disinfectant and the sterile environment made the girls quieter than usual. They held June's hands tightly as they walked down the white hallway. Silas led the way, guiding them to the private room. "I prepared Marianne for the visit," he said before they went in. "She's thinner and paler, but don't be alarmed. She's getting better." June nodded, lightly squeezing her daughter's hands as a sign of reassurance. When they entered, they found Marianne reclining in the hospital bed. Silas hadn't exaggerated. She looked like she had lost several pounds in a short time. Her naturally fair skin was almost translucent. An oxygen mask rested beside the bed, apparently used only when needed. But her eyes, the same dark eyes Elodie and Mira had inherited, lit up when she saw the girls. A faint but genuine smile appeared on her lips. "You came," she said in a hoarse voice, extending a trembling hand. The girls hesitated for a moment, intimidated by the environment and Marianne's frail appearance. June gave their backs a gentle nudge, encouraging them. "We made drawings for you," said Elodie, being the first to approach. She handed her card, where she had drawn colorful flowers around the words "Get well soon," written in her childish handwriting. "It's beautiful," Marianne replied, her eyes already shining with unshed tears. "Thank you, sweetie." Mira was next, showing her rainbow. "I put all the colors because you like to paint with us," she explained. Marianne took both drawings and pressed them to her chest, as if they were precious treasures. "They're the most beautiful gifts I've ever received," she said, unable to hold back a tear that slid down her pale face. Silas came over, placing a chair next to the bed for the girls to sit. June stood a little back, giving them space for the moment, but always watchful. For the next half hour, the girls told Marianne about their days, the drawings they had made. the new book June was reading to them before bed. They spoke with enthusiasm, as if wanting to fill the sterile room with color and life. Marianne listened to everything with a smile on her face, occasionally asking a question or making a comment. Despite her evident weakness, her eyes remained alert, absorbing every word, every gesture from the girls. "Are you going to get better soon?" Mira asked, after a moment of silence. "I will," Marianne replied, reaching out to lightly touch the girl's hair. "Especially now that I've had a visit from you. It's given me the strength to get better quickly." June noticed the girls were starting to get restless. It was hard for 5-year-olds to stay still for long in such a restrictive environment. "I think it's time for us to go," she said softly. "Marianne needs to rest." The girls nodded, understanding. They said their goodbyes with shy kisses on Marianne's cheeks, who hugged them for as long as her strength allowed. "Thank you for coming," she said, looking not just at the girls, but at June as well. "It meant so much to me." June just nodded, feeling strangely touched by the sincerity in Marianne's words. Silas walked them to the car, helped settle the girls, and promised to come back soon to pick them up for another outing, as soon as Marianne was better. The twins waved excitedly as the car drove away. "He seemed sad," Elodie commented, ever perceptive. "It's hard when someone we love is sick," June replied, looking in the rearview mirror. "But you helped a lot today. I'm sure Marianne was very happy with your visit." When Silas returned to the hospital, he found Marianne still holding the drawings. Her face was tear-streaked, but there was a different calm in her expression. "They're wonderful," she said, as he sat beside her. "So sweet, so perfect." Silas took her hand, agreeing silently. "Do you think they'll ever call me Mum?" Marianne asked, her voice almost a whisper. "If I could go back in time, I wouldn't have abandoned them. It was the biggest mistake of my life." The tears returned, more intense now. Silas gently wiped them away with his thumb. "Be patient," he said, his voice soft but firm. "It's a start. They came today, they were happy to see you. The rest will come with time." Marianne nodded, closing her eyes for a moment. The weight of regret, 6 years of guilt and searching, seemed lighter in that instant. It hadn't disappeared, and perhaps it never would completely. But the girls' visit, their genuine smiles, their drawings made especially for her, were small steps toward healing. "You're right," Silas agreed, squeezing her hand. "We can't change the past. But the future is still being written." Marianne looked again at the drawings in her lap. Little works of art created by hands she had helped bring into the world but had not helped raise. Hands that, despite everything, had offered her a gift. Not just the colorful cards, but something far more valuable. A second chance. 3 weeks passed since the hospital visit. Marianne was recovering at home, still weak but getting better each day. The visits continued, now at Silas and Marianne's house, a spacious residence in a tree-lined neighborhood that made June's small apartment seem even more cramped in comparison. June allowed the girls to go on Sundays, always with her present. She watched with conflicting feelings as Elodie and Mira explored the large rooms, the garden with swings, the living room filled with books. She saw the sparkle in their eyes with each new discovery, each new toy, each new experience she could never provide. On this particular Sunday, the atmosphere seemed different. Marianne was quieter than usual, casting nervous glances at Silas from time to time. He also seemed tense, checking his watch repeatedly. After lunch, when the girls went to play in the garden, Silas approached June. "Can we talk? In private?" June felt a tightness in her chest. For months she had dreaded this moment, not knowing exactly what it would be like, only certain it would come. "Of course," she replied, keeping her voice steady. They went to Silas's office, an elegant room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a large, dark wood desk. Marianne was already waiting there, sitting in a leather armchair, her hands restless in her lap. Please, have a seat," Silas said, indicating another armchair. June remained standing. "I'd prefer you to be direct," she said, crossing her arms as if to shield herself from what was coming. Silas and Marianne exchanged glances. It was he who spoke. "June, over these months, we've seen how much you love the girls and how well you've cared for them all these years. Our gratitude is eternal. But, June prompted, feeling the blood pound in her temples. But we've also realized they could have more opportunities, Silas continued. Better schools, extracurricular activities, travel, a room of their own for each of them. They don't need luxury to be happy, June interrupted, her voice louder than she intended. It's not just about luxury, Marianne intervened softly. It's about opportunities, about their future. We've decided to file for custody, Silas said finally, the words falling like stones into the silence of the room. June felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. Even though she had anticipated this moment, nothing had prepared her for the sharp pain she felt. You promised, she said, her voice trembling. You promised you wouldn't try to take them from me. We don't want to take them completely, Marianne explained quickly. We're thinking of shared custody. You would continue to be a part of their lives. A part. June felt her control slipping away. I am their mother. Who was there when they had a fever? When they learned to walk? When they had nightmares? Who worked 2 jobs to feed them? And we appreciate that, Silas said, keeping his voice calm. But we are the biological parents. We have legal rights. And more importantly, we have the means to give them a future that you alone cannot provide. June felt tears burning in her eyes but refused to let them fall. You abandoned them, she said through clenched teeth. You left them to die in that river. What kind of rights does that give you? Marianne looked down, her face contorted in an expression of pain. We made a terrible mistake, Silas admitted, and we've spent 6 years regretting it, searching for a way to fix it. This is our chance, June, our chance to do the right thing by the girls. The right thing? June let out a bitter laugh. The right thing would be to leave them with the only mother they've ever known, in the only house they consider home. June, Marianne stood up, approaching cautiously. We don't want to be your enemies. We want to work together, for the good of the girls. If you wanted what was best for them, you wouldn't be doing this. June knew she was losing control, that her emotions were raw, but she couldn't help it. The fear she had been suppressing for months was finally overflowing. We've already hired a lawyer, Silas said, his voice firm but not cruel. The preliminary hearing is set for next week. It would be better if we could reach an agreement before then. An agreement? June shook her head in disbelief. There is no agreement possible when it comes to my daughters. June, please, Marianne insisted. Think of the girls. A court battle will be painful for everyone, especially for them. Just then the office door opened. Elodie and Mira were peeking in, their eyes wide, frightened by the raised voices. Mommy, Elodie called, her small voice trembling slightly. Is everything okay? June took a deep breath, forcing herself to regain her composure. The girls shouldn't witness this, shouldn't feel the weight of this conflict. Everything is fine, sweetie, she replied, forcing a smile. We're just finishing our conversation. Why were you yelling? Asked Mira, always direct. I wasn't yelling, honey, just talking a little louder. Silas approached the girls, kneeling to be at their level. Your mum and we were talking about grown-up things. Sometimes grown-ups get a little excited when they talk, he explained gently. The girls didn't seem convinced. Their little eyes darted from June to Silas and Marianne, sensing the tension in the air. I think it's time for us to go home, June said, moving toward her daughters and taking their hands. Let's get your coats, but we haven't played on the new swing yet, Mira protested. Another day, June replied firmly. We need to go today. As she helped the girls get dressed, June avoided looking at Silas and Marianne. She felt betrayed, deceived. For months they had built a relationship based on what she believed was mutual respect, only to find out they were planning this all along. We'll talk more about this later, Silas said, as they were at the door. Calmly. There's a lot to consider. June just nodded stiffly, unable to trust her voice to reply. On the way home, the girls were unusually quiet, sensing their mother's change in mood. June tried to hide her anguish, but her thoughts were in a turmoil. How could she fight them? She had no money for lawyers. She didn't have a big house, nor could she provide private schools. What did she have to offer besides love? Mommy, why were you mad at Silas and Marianne? Elodie finally asked, breaking the tense silence. June took a deep breath. How to explain something so complex to 5-year-old children? I wasn't mad, sweetie. We just disagreed about some things. What things? Mira insisted. Grown-up things, June replied, repeating Silas's evasive explanation. Almost nothing you need to worry about. But the girls were too perceptive to be so easily fooled. They felt the shift, the invisible weight that now hung over them. For the rest of the day, June tried to maintain normalcy. She cooked the girls' favorite dinner, read stories, and organized a small painting session at the kitchen table. But her smile didn't reach her eyes, and her mind kept returning to the conversation in Silas's office. When she finally put the girls to bed, June remained seated beside the bed, watching their sleeping faces. The dim light from the lamp cast soft shadows on their identical features. So small, so innocent, unaware of the storm brewing around them. June reached out, lightly touching Elodie's dark hair, then Mira's. She memorized every detail, every curve of their faces, as if trying to burn the image into her soul, as if this could be the last night she would see them like this, under her roof, in her bed. The tears she had held back all afternoon finally came, silent, streaming down her face. She didn't wipe them away. She let them fall, witnesses to her pain, her fear, her fiercely protective love, and so she stayed, watching over her daughters, sleep until the early hours of the morning. When exhaustion finally overcame her, she fell asleep right there, sitting, one hand still resting protectively on the blanket that covered her girls. The next day, she had a decision to make, and for the first time in 6 years, she didn't know if she would be strong enough to protect what she loved most in the world. The family court building was intimidating. Long hallways, heavy doors, muffled voices discussing destinies. June clutched the plastic folder to her chest like a shield. Inside it, 6 years of memories hastily organized, photos, drawings, small notebooks with notes of progress and special moments. Helen, the social worker who had helped her legalize the girls' situation years ago, was by her side. She wasn't a lawyer, but she knew the system well and had offered to support her. "So I take a deep breath," she advised, placing a hand on June's shoulder. "Remember what we talked about. Be honest, show your love for the girls, but don't attack Silas and Marianne. It will only hurt your case." June nodded, unable to speak. For the past few days, she had oscillated between anger, fear, and a fierce determination. Now, standing in that cold hallway, she felt small, fragile, inadequate. Elodie and Mira were in a special room with a court psychologist. June had explained to them, as gently as possible, that a judge would talk to everyone to decide what their lives would be like from now on. The girls seemed confused, but not scared. They were still too young to fully understand what was at stake. Across the hall, Silas and Marianne were talking in low voices with their lawyer, a middle-aged man in an impeccable suit with a leather briefcase that looked like it cost more than a month of June's rent. They avoided looking in her direction, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps as a strategy. Case number 47293, custody of minors Elodie and Mira Thompson, an officer announced, opening the courtroom door. Judge Fleming was a man of about 60, with grey hair and sharp eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses. His face had expression lines that suggested both severity and compassion, someone who had seen it all in his career but still cared. "This is a preliminary hearing to determine custody arrangements," he began, after the formal introductions. "I understand we have a rather unusual situation here." Silas and Marianne's lawyer spoke first, presenting the case with professional eloquence. He explained how the couple had made a terrible error in judgment in a moment of extreme desperation, how they had spent years searching for their daughters, and how they now had the means to offer a stable home, quality education, and financial security. "My clients recognize and value the role that Mrs. Thompson has played in the girls' lives," he concluded. But as the biological parents, they are exercising their legal right to request custody, offering to share it in a way that serves the best interest of the children. When it was her turn, June felt her throat go dry. Helen gave her a slight encouraging nudge. "Your Honor," she began, her voice firmer than she expected, "I haven't prepared a fancy speech. I just brought the truth. She opened the folder and took out a crumpled photo, the first one she had taken of the girls, a few weeks after finding them. "This was the beginning of our family," she said, handing the photo to the judge. "Two abandoned babies and a lonely woman, learning to be a mother overnight." Next, she pulled out a small cloth shoe. "I made this little shoe for Elodie when she started taking her first steps. I didn't have money to buy new shoes every 2 months, so I learned to make them." One by one, June presented the treasures from her folder. Mira's first recognizable drawing, a circle with 2 sticks that she proudly called Mommy. The notebook where she wrote down every new word the girls learned. Photos of simple but love-filled birthdays. The prescription from the time Elodie had pneumonia, and June spent 3 sleepless nights applying cool compresses to bring down the fever. "I can't offer them a big house or trips abroad," she continued, now with tears in her eyes but still controlled. "I can't afford private schools or piano lessons, but I can offer, and have always offered, all the love that exists in me. I was there for every fever, every nightmare, every smile, every achievement." The judge listened attentively, examining each item June presented. "Ms. Thompson," he interrupted gently, "no one in this room questions your love for the girls or your dedication as a mother. The question is, what would be best for Elodie and Mira now, considering all factors?" "What's best for them is to stay with the only mother they've ever known," June replied, her voice firm again. "What's best is not to tear them away from the only home they've ever had. What's best is to respect the bond we have built." The judge asked a few more questions to both parties, while consulting the reports prepared by the social workers and psychologists. After nearly 2 hours, he called for a recess. "I would like to speak with the girls now," he announced, "in private." June felt her heart sink. Her daughters, so small, facing a stranger alone who would decide their future. "They'll be fine," Helen whispered, squeezing her hand. "The psychologist will be present. Judge Fleming is known for being kind to children." The next 20 minutes were the longest of June's life. Sitting on the hard bench in the hallway, she watched the closed door of the judge's chambers, imagining what her daughters were saying, fearing they wouldn't understand the importance of their words. When they were finally called back in, June noticed the judge had a different expression, softer, almost moved. The girls had already been taken back to the special room with the psychologist. "I had a very enlightening conversation with Elodie and Mira," the judge began. "They are exceptionally articulate children for their age, and surprisingly candid." He paused, looking directly at the 3 adults before him. "I asked them who they would like to live with. Do you know what they answered?" They said, in unison, as if they had rehearsed it. "We want to stay with Mommy, June. But we like seeing the others too." June felt a wave of relief so intense it nearly knocked her out of her chair. Beside her, she heard Marianne suppress a sob. "When I asked why they wanted to stay with Ms. Thompson," the judge continued, "Mira said something very simple but profound, because she was always there. And Elodie added, 'She's our real mommy.'" The judge closed the folder in front of him and steepled his fingers. "In these cases, I have to consider many factors: biological ties, stability, financial resources, emotional bonds. But the emotional well-being of the children always comes first." He looked at Silas and Marianne. "Mr. and Mrs. Laurent, it is undeniable that you have more financial resources and can offer certain opportunities that Ms. Thompson cannot. It is also undeniable that you are the biological parents and have legal rights, but—" He turned to June. "The bond that Mrs. Thompson has built with these children over 6 years of constant dedication cannot be ignored or underestimated. This is the only home they have known, the only mother they have had." The judge took a deep breath before continuing. "My decision is to grant primary custody to Miss Thompson, with extensive and regular visitation rights for Mr. and Mrs. Laurent. The visits can evolve to overnights and longer periods as the girls feel comfortable. Re-evaluation in 6 months." June closed her eyes, letting tears of relief finally fall. Helen squeezed her shoulder in silent congratulations. Across the room, Marianne was crying silently, her face hidden in her hands. Silas, beside her, seemed to be wrestling with conflicting emotions, disappointment, and something that looked almost like relief. "I would like to add," the judge continued, "that I rarely see children so well adjusted in cases like this. That is a testament to the upbringing they have received. Miss Thompson, my congratulations." After the hearing, June reunited with the girls in the waiting room. She hugged them tightly, with no words to express the whirlwind of emotions she felt. "Can we go home now?" Elodie asked, tired after the long day. "Yes, my love, we're going home." As they headed for the exit, Silas and Marianne approached timidly. "June," Silas called hesitantly. "Can we talk for a moment?" She nodded, asking Helen to take the girls to the car. "The judge made the right decision," Silas said, surprising her. "We saw it on the girls' faces when they talked about you. That sparkle in their eyes, that unconditional love. We want to apologize," Marianne added, wiping her tears, "for everything, for the abandonment 6 years ago, and for trying to take them from you now." June didn't know how to respond. She had prepared for a continued battle, not a surrender. "We'd like to propose something," Silas continued. "Always not as compensation, because we know nothing could make up for what we did, but as a gesture of recognition and gratitude. We bought a house," he explained, "on the same street as ours, 3 bedrooms, a garden, near a good public school. We would like the 3 of you to live there, no rent, no mortgage. The house would be put in your name." June blinked, incredulous. "And there's more," Marianne added. "Silas has a design firm. We need someone with a talent for sewing and handicrafts. The salary is good, with flexible hours, so you can be with the girls after school." "Why?" was all June could ask. "Because it's the right thing to do," Silas replied simply. "Because our daughters deserve to have all of us in their lives, working together, not as adversaries. And because you deserve it," Marianne completed. "For all the love you gave when we couldn't." June looked at the couple before her. The resentment she had cultivated over the past weeks began to dissipate, not completely, but enough to glimpse a different future than the one she had imagined. "I'll think about the offer," she said finally. "For the girls." In the following weeks, June visited the house, spacious, bright, with a room for each girl and a garden where they could play. She visited Silas's company and realized the job offer was genuine, not just charity. Slowly, a new dynamic began to form between the 3 adults. They weren't friends, but they weren't enemies either. They were united by something stronger than their differences. The love for 2 girls who, by chance or destiny, belonged to all of them in different ways. 2 months after the hearing, June and the girls moved into the new house. Elodie and Mira ran through the rooms, amazed by the space, delighted to have their own rooms for the first time. "I like it here," declared Mira, looking out her bedroom window at the flowering garden. "And we can visit Silas and Marianne whenever we want, right?" "Yes," June replied, smiling. They live very close now. That night, after putting the girls to bed, June sat on the porch of her new house. The night air was fresh, full of possibilities. The path to get there had been long and painful, marked by loss and encounters, tears and laughter, fear and hope. She looked up at the starry sky, thinking how unpredictable life could be, how an encounter by a river could change everything, how love, in its many forms, could heal even the deepest wounds. She didn't know what the future held for her unconventional family. She only knew that, together, she, Silas, Marianne, and above all, Elodie and Mira, they would find a way. 6 months passed since the move to the new house. Autumn painted the neighborhood trees in shades of gold and red, and a cool breeze stirred the curtains June had sewn for the windows. Life had found a new rhythm, different, but surprisingly harmonious. The girls, now almost 6, attended Westfield Elementary School, just a few blocks away. It was a public school, but with an excellent reputation. For the first few weeks, June walked them every day. But soon they adapted and gained the confidence to go on their own, always under June's watchful eye, who observed them from the corner until they entered the gate. At Silas's company, June found not just a job, but a purpose. Her talent with needle and thread, honed by years of necessity, proved valuable in the design department. She started with small projects, but soon her skills were recognized, and she began to lead the development of prototypes for a new product line. The relationship between the three adults had evolved from a tense truce to a functional partnership. They weren't exactly friends, but they had found a delicate balance that worked. The girls spent 2 days a week at Silas and Marianne's house, usually Wednesdays and Sundays. Holidays and special dates were celebrated together at one house or the other. On a particularly sunny Sunday, Silas and Marianne took the girls to a fall festival on the outskirts of the city. June couldn't go. She had an important deadline at work, but she encouraged the outing. "Bring back lots of pictures," she requested, kissing her daughters on the forehead before they left. The day was magical for the twins. The festival had everything children their age could wish for: popcorn, cotton candy, carousels, games, and a large hay bale maze. Silas and Marianne captured every moment, every smile, every expression of wonder. On the way back, late in the afternoon, the girls were exhausted but happy. In the back seat of the car, Elodie was already dozing, her head resting on her sister's shoulder. Mira, always the most resistant to sleep, looked out the window at the trees passing in colorful blurs. "It was the best day," she declared suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled in the car. Silas smiled in the rearview mirror. "I'm glad you enjoyed it, little one." "Can we come back next year?" Mira asked, yawning. "Of course, we can," Marianne replied, turning to look at the girl. "We'll make it a tradition," Mira smiled, her eyes heavy with sleep. When the car finally stopped in front of June's house, Silas turned off the engine and got out to help the girls. Elodie was still asleep, so he carefully picked her up in his arms. Marianne held Mira's hand, who was staggering with sleep, and together they walked up to the porch. June opened the door before they even rang the bell, smiling at the sleepy state of her daughters. "Looks like the day was a success," she commented, signaling for them to come in. "It was amazing, Mommy," Mira murmured, rubbing her eyes. "We ate candy apples and found our way out of the maze all by ourselves." "That's wonderful," June replied, genuinely happy for the girls' experience. "You can tell me all the details tomorrow, okay? Now it's time for a quick bath and bed." Silas gently placed Elodie on the sofa, where she stirred but didn't wake up. June thanked him with a nod and went to help Mira take off her coat. "Good night, Princess," Silas said goodbye, kissing the top of Mira's head. "Rest well." "Good night," Marianne added, kneeling to hug the girl. Mira returned the hug and then, in a natural movement, kissed Marianne's cheek and said, "Good night, Mommy." She turned to Silas and, with the same naturalness, added, "Good night, Daddy." A sudden silence fell over the room. Those simple words, Mommy and Daddy, had never been used by the girls to refer to Silas and Marianne before. The moment seemed to freeze in time. Silas stood paralyzed, his eyes suddenly welling up. He tried to hide it, clearing his throat and adjusting his shirt collar, but it was too late. Tears were already streaming freely down his face. Marianne, still kneeling, remained motionless for an instant, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. Then, without a word, she opened her arms again and pulled Mira into a tight hug. Next, she extended an arm to the sofa and included the still sleeping Elodie in that moment. June watched the scene with conflicting emotions. A part of her felt a pang of jealousy, of fear of losing the special place she held in her daughters' hearts. But another part, larger, more generous, recognized the beauty of that moment, the healing it represented for everyone. "They called you Mom and Dad," she said softly, meeting Silas's emotional gaze. "It's what you are." That night, after Silas and Marianne had left and the girls were sound asleep, June sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The starry sky above seemed particularly bright. She took a deep breath, absorbing the tranquility of the night and the strange peace she felt. Mira's words had sealed a new phase in their lives. The titles of Mommy and Daddy no longer belonged exclusively to June. They were now shared, but somehow that didn't diminish her role. It only expanded the circle of love around her daughters. 2 weeks later, a special date arrived. It had been exactly 6 years since that cold morning when June found the bucket with the newborns by the river. The date, which she used to celebrate only with the girls, would now be celebrated together. They decided to have a small party in the garden of June's house. The day was perfect, Clear sky, mild temperature. Flowers blooming in the beds that Marianne had helped plant. Silas brought an elaborate cake, ordered from the best bakery in town. 2 sugar dolls on top, identical, holding hands. Marianne decorated the garden with colorful balloons and ribbons. June prepared the girls' favorite dish, pasta with homemade fresh tomato sauce. The twins, excited about the celebration, ran around the garden, showing Silas and Marianne the special corners they had discovered, the perfect tree to climb, the bush where a bird had made a nest, the secret place where they hid their treasures. When it was time to cut the cake, everyone gathered around the table. The girls, now officially 6 years old, had their faces lit by the candlelight. "Before we sing happy birthday," Silas said, clearing his throat, "I'd like to make a toast." He raised his glass of lemonade. Alcoholic beverages had been banned from the celebration by joint decision. To 6 years of miracles, to 2 wonderful girls who taught us the true meaning of family. And to June, he paused, searching for the right words, to the woman who saved our daughters and in a way saved us too. Marianne, with tears in her eyes, raised her glass. And to second chances and to hearts that grow to accommodate more love. June looked around, at the excited girls, at the emotional Silas and Marianne, at the flowering garden of her new home, at the unexpected life she had found. She raised her own glass. "It doesn't matter where it started," she said, her voice firm. "It matters where it's arrived." They sang happy birthday, cut the cake, and laughed at old stories. The girls blew out the candles together, holding hands, as they had done on all previous birthdays. But this time, there was something different, a complete circle, an expanded family, a broader future. As the sun began to set, Silas suggested a photo to mark the occasion. He set up the camera on a tripod and programmed the timer. "Everyone together," he called, running to join the group. The 5 of them huddled together, arms intertwined, with sincere smiles. Elodie and Mira in the center, June on one side, Silas and Marianne on the other. The family that no one could have imagined, but that somehow made perfect sense. The flash went off, capturing that moment forever. 5 people united not by blood or obligation, but by choice, by forgiveness, by love. A story that had begun with abandonment and hopelessness, but had found its way to healing and acceptance. A love that didn't divide, it only multiplied. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.